Welcome back to the Untitled Interlude YouTube channel, with album reviews, discography guides and think pieces. Now today's review is a review of the brand new EP from post-punk songstress Billy Nomates called Emergency Telephone. Now this EP comes at a bit of a weird time in her kind of career, or it comes at a good time I should probably say, because last year she came out with a brilliant self-titled album that I gave an absolutely rave review to. It was easily one of my favourites of that year, just such raw edge but also such raw talent, and she managed to combine that really kind of edgy, angular post-punk sound with more kind of accessible pop elements, if you like, which kind of, you know, it really gave it a distinguishable sound from its contemporaries and ended up sounding brilliant, really. I mean, you know, it just barely wasn't my favourite album of that year, but I knew that going forward she had the potential to do exactly that. So with this new EP, obviously Emergency Telephone, there's a bit of a concept going on there, especially with the front cover and especially with some of the songs, as we'll get into this review, they kind of carry that telephone theme. So I guess you could say this is somewhat of a concept EP, which is exciting. I mean, it's not something I was really expecting, but it's still a nice change. It's about 17 minutes, so very concise in terms of track length, so, you know, we're not getting like 9-minute post-punk epics on this EP or anything. But, you know, I was just hoping on this new EP that she'd do what she's already been doing, maybe iron out one or two of the little creases that were showing on that first album, and we'd basically be good to go. So, here's what I thought of Billy Nomates' brand new EP, Emergency Telephone. The first track, and the title track, is called Emergency Telephone, and I think acts as quite a good opener and a title track as well, because it kind of exposes you to the style that this EP will be kind of running off of, I guess, for the foreseeable future. And I think it does a good job of like establishing those sounds, because although there is still that trademark Billy Nomates sound there, it's noticeably a subtler sound palette, you know. Instead of the very angular, like bass heavy post-punk sound, we're instead getting these you know, some nice guitar riffs, some subtle break beats going away in the background. Again, the bass is a lot less prominent in this mix, which isn't necessarily a problem, I would say. In fact, I think it adds to this album's sense of like quaintness, I suppose, if you want to put it one way. And obviously Tor is on like top vocal and lyrical form, not only in terms of skill and like melodies and stuff, but also in terms of lyrics, especially on this first track. I think it's about like communication in the modern age, hence Emergency Telephone, which is, I think, quite a weird analogy or metaphor or whatever it is, but I think one that definitely works in the context of like the album's general message or like ethos, I suppose. And like I do have one minor complaint about it, and that's that at the start of each track it's like has these like just a load of telephone noises at the start of this track, and then to link between the tracks, if you listen on the vinyl version or the streaming version, it just kind of links it with these telephone sounds. And I think that if the concept is already there, you shouldn't feel the need to like reinforce it as much as she does. Like we get that the concept is about emergency telephone, like you don't have to put telephone sound effects in you know, in the middle of the tracks, but that is another thing. She actually uses like ringtones as instrumental textures in this track and in many others, and I think basically in all cases that works quite well. I just think in terms of like the transitions between tracks, I think if you've got the songs there and the ideas there and it's all solid enough, you don't need to reinstate it, because I think the music will speak for itself. To summarise, this track does its job as a title track phenomenally. It's in your face, yet kind of reserved, it's catchy, it's sort of very introspective as well. The sound design, or at least the sound choices, are a bit more kind of intricate and layered this time around. It's just a really good start in general, I think.
Emergency telephone, ringing off the wall. I don't believe in anything anymore.
The second track is called Right Behind You, and it's possibly a bit more reminiscent of some of the stuff off the self-titled album. Like the drums and bass are a bit punchier than they were on the last track. You know, they have quite a nice groove to them. The use of subtle synths in the verse is quite nice as well. Tor obviously sounds brilliant, as she always has done. And the chorus on this really reminds me of this indie rock song that I cannot put my finger on, but just the way the guitar riff sounds in this chorus, which is pretty cool, by the way. It just reminds me of this song that I can't remember the title of, but it's so similar and it's killing me that I can't remember it. But, you know, those are some definite admirable elements to this song. But my only real problem with this song in general isn't really to do with the song itself, man. I mean, it's just that comparatively, compared to everything else on this EP, it seems a bit flat, or it's not completely redundant. I don't want to say that, because some of the ideas, again, like the riff on the chorus, are quite, I guess, exclusive to this track. It's just that in terms of maybe like the energy, or just like, I think it is the energy. I think just because the reserved energy on Emergency Telephone worked, because it was like, that is how the track was. It had that very kind of reserved yet kind of brimming energy to it, whereas this track just sort of sounds a little bit flat and deflated more than anything else. And I mean, I just think that the chorus maybe is not as memorable as some of the other ones are. Maybe I think I can put that down to it. And another thing is that I think, like, later on in the track, when they start to mix like two layers of synths together, it doesn't really work quite as well as it maybe could have done. Like, just the sounds of the synths that they're trying to mesh together just don't really work as well. So there are a few critiques I have of this track, and it's probably my least favourite off of this EP, but that doesn't mean that it's bad by any means, because it's still pretty good.
Right behind you now, I got your story straight. Oh, you couldn't hurt anybody. He had it coming.
The third track is the only single from this EP, called Heels, and this is easily the most urgent track off of this EP, because I've talked a few times before already in this review about how the title track, Emergency Telephone, had that really kind of reserved energy to it, which was one of its admirable traits. But this track is just like a lot more boisterous in comparison. Like, the beat is really driving and quite fat as well, quite chunky as a beat. I'm not sure whether those are the right adjectives to be using to describe drum beats, but I digress. The nice kind of soulish organ sounds that she uses throughout the track are really nice. Obviously, she's on top vocal form, as I've said over and over and over, although the mix of kind of spoken and sung vocals, particularly on this song, go down quite well. And when we get to the chorus, as well as it being an absolute earworm of a chorus that I still can't get it out of my head now, although now that I've said that, it is embarrassing that I can't remember a lot of it, but I mean, whatever. I do think that the use of phone sounds in the chorus as well is very effective, and the bridge on this is surprisingly great. Like, the way that the melody sounds over these like organ chords that get like doubled up and beefed up, it sounds quite nice. And then when we go into the final chorus, there are these really nice backup harmonies that go along with the chorus that sound brilliant. So yeah, with this track I really have no complaints. Like, it is definitely that trademark Billy Nomates sound, but it does it in a way that completely makes sense for the sound of this LP, because it doesn't sound redundant, and it doesn't sound like, I guess, derivative of some of the stuff that we've already heard on previous releases or previous songs. But as soon as you hear this track, you know it's Billy Nomates, and as soon as you hear this track, you know it's fantastic.
Lift your boots till your head. I refuse to die.
Now, with this next track, I was even debating as to whether to include it in the review, because it's not really a track. The most I could really describe it as is like an Untitled Interlude, but you know, I guess I thought it deserved talking about, so I'm going to talk about it. So it starts with 20 seconds of this same looping phone sound, which I get, like, phone sounds are the kind of thread that ties this EP together, but like, the fact that it goes on for 20 seconds is a little bit taking the piss at this point. But for the rest of the minute of the track, and that's another thing, this track is only like a minute and 20 seconds long, but for the minute that's left of the track is something that is quite strange, because Tor's vocals and the like very subtle synths that are underneath it, the way they blend together and just the way they sound in general is absolutely impeccable. It sounds fantastic. Just the way her vocals sound and the actual lyrics that she's singing just sound fantastic. the synths underneath it provide a great backdrop, but my only couple of problems are that, one, while all this great synth vocal stuff is going on, there's just constant blaring phone sounds that are just burying all of that stuff that's going on underneath it. And also, given this track is like barely 1 minute long if you don't count the phone sounds at the beginning, it really doesn't leave as much as an impression as I would like it to. Like, I would kill for this to be built out into an entire track because it sounds fantastic, but in the context that it's in on this EP, I really don't understand why it was here. It's almost as if it was put here to be like, oh, look, she can actually, you know, do kind of, as well as doing this boisterous singing stuff, she can also, like, sing properly really, 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 really well, but we're only going to give you, like, a minute of it, and we're going to bury it underneath phone sounds, and then you sat there listening to the EP like, no, why can't we get more of this? Please make more of this. It sounds great. It's just, I don't understand why it was put on this EP in the first place, really, but, you know, if we get a full version of this track down the line, I guess it was worth it.
On the edge of everything. On the verge.
The final track on the EP is called Petrol, Fumes, and it's sort of strange in that it's an anomaly, but also sort of not an anomaly, because it has that kind of same driving, punchy vibe that the drums and bass on like Right Behind You had, and the electric pianos of Heels, kind of like the drum beats and stuff on Right Behind You combined with the electric pianos on Heels, and it sounds great as an instrumental palette. I just want to put that out there. Like, the instrumental on this sounds fantastic, and I think it says something of Tor's talent on this track, that she can pull off a track that is as earnest as this is, especially like within her sound, which is, you know, normally quite boisterous and quite like rebellious, and I guess not very emotional. Like, obviously there are emotions of like either sadness or anger or whatever it might be, but they're not very like overt. I mean, obviously you can tell that anger is there, but it's rarely ever like properly emotional, if you get what I mean. But this track somehow manages to do an amazing job at exactly that, because these lyrics are very blunt and very earnest and very open, but still manage to sound as if they were like not as blunt as they are. Like, they sound like they've been thought about for ages and written, which obviously they have been, but just the blunt way that they're put across and the blunt language that's used is actually quite effective, because it creates this kind of vibe where just the earnesty that she sings these lyrics with is just compelling, really, and just the backdrop that's underneath it really helps to aid that vibe that this track has going for it. Obviously the chorus is another fantastic one, but I think just the most admirable thing about this track, apart from like the instrumental and the actual vocal performance, is just the absolute sheer earnesty with which this track is delivered. And I have to say, this is one ballsy way to end an EP off, but I'm glad she did it this way, because this track is just fantastic. There's no other way I can really phrase it. Like, just the instrumental is fantastic, vocally she's fantastic, it's within her sound, but also it's a complete step in another direction, which is fantastic. Just everything is just impeccable. It's impeccable.
Well, nothing's ever gonna really be the same right after this. Oh yeah, the walls can fall down. There's nothing in this.
So, what did I think of Billy Nomates' new EP, Emergency Telephone? Well, it's a bit hard to put into words, really, because yes, it's not as boisterous and in your face and angry as the self-titled album was, but it's a lot more emotionally fragile. The sound palette is a lot wider on this EP. Yes, some of the ideas aren't as well executed as others, and maybe some of the concepts or aspects of the concept could have been ironed out a little bit, but I guess because this is an EP, those are a bit easier to spot, but that definitely should not take away from when this EP is brilliant. And when this EP is brilliant, I would say it eclipses the self-titled album for me, because the self-titled album was absolutely, unquestionably brilliant, but there are just moments on this EP where I was almost in awe of just like, wow, she can, you know, she can do that. And I think she's in a place artistically when she could put out an EP like this and it completely makes sense, because I think if she'd kind of built a precedent of kind of these boisterous, in-your-face, angry albums and then come out with this, maybe the reception would have been slightly different. But the fact that she's put it out so early in her career, being like, hey guys, I can do this and I can also do this, it lends her to be able to kind of, you know, broaden both sides of the musical spectrum as her career goes on. So in terms of a score for this EP, this is difficult because obviously because it's an EP, there's less stuff there, so in a way I guess it's more difficult to rank. I would probably say maybe like a light 8, I would say, a light 8 probably, because there's some brilliant ideas there. Again, maybe just because it's an EP, the ones that aren't executed as well are a bit easier to pick out, but it's still fantastic nonetheless. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Please consider liking and subscribing if you want to see more videos. Part 3 of the discography guide coming soon. We've got a brand new series coming very, very soon as well, so I'm very excited for that. I hope you are as well. I'm going to keep doing album reviews, obviously, because there's some new stuff coming out. Shawn Ryder has got a new single coming out in March for an album that's in June, so that'll be interesting. You know, there's just loads of videos that I have ideas for that will all be coming at some point, so just sit tight and they will eventually come into being. But until then, I'll see you later, guys.